Last month when I announced this video, I characterized it as an early Christmas gift because I've wanted to do this topic for so long. But of course, this video comes out in October, and October isn't Christmas. It's Halloween, and that works too because there's not a thing in Star Trek scarier than this right here. Look, I know she has her fans. I know some of you are extremely attached to this character, even defensive of her, and it's not my aim to make you feel bad about that or attacked because of it. Some of you have very personal reasons for loving this character, and I respect that. And this is all subjective when it comes right down to it anyway. It's only my opinion. However, as I attempt to articulate that opinion through the course of this video, I am probably going to say some really mean things about this character you adore. Humorous things. I'm coming with jokes. But also hateful things because I hate this character. I hate her. So, if watching me unapologetically mock her while I describe in detail why I think she's by far the worst character in the entire franchise is just going to annoy you or upset you or otherwise ruin your day, maybe skip this one. Or keep watching and consider yourself duly warned, because from here on in, I've only got one purpose, and that purpose is to tell you why Lwaxana Troi is actually pretty awful. In the interest of maintaining some semblance of organization and keeping this from devolving into a total frothing rant, I've divided my explanation of why I think Lwaxana Troi is so terrible into three categories. The first category is, she's a bad person. The best way for me to show you why I find her to be such a bad person is to begin by answering a more basic question. Who is Lwaxana Troi? And can I just say, if you're watching this and you have no idea what the answer to that question is, Christ, do I envy you. Lwaxana Troi is the mother of Star Trek The Next Generation series regular Counselor Deanna Troi. She appears in a total of 6 episodes of TNG, though it feels like about 100 times that many. 1 episode in each season of TNG, except Season 6, the best season of TNG. That's probably not a coincidence. She also appears in 3 episodes of Star Trek Deep Space Nine for reasons I will never understand. She is an ambassador representing her home planet, Beta Z, and apparently she's kind of a big shot where she comes from. When challenged, she frequently resorts to listing her credentials: daughter of the 5th House, holder of the sacred chalice of Reeks, heir to the holy rings of Beta Z. She's very important, you guys, and you should totally be impressed. Her ambassadorial duties often provide the pretext for why she happens to be on the Enterprise whenever we see her, but her actual activities on the episodes in which she appears are usually anything but professional. Her husband is dead, lucky him, so the widow Troi busies herself with 2 primary hobbies: trying to get her daughter married and trying to get herself laid. Not that there's anything wrong with that last one necessarily. I'll get more into that later. Oh, and like all Betazoid people, Lwaxana is telepathic. Her daughter, Deanna, is only half Betazoid. Deanna's father, the fortunate dead, was human, so Deanna is merely empathic. She can sense emotions. Not Lwaxana. She can full-on read minds, and she does. When I say to other Trekkies that I think Lwaxana is a terrible person, they usually assume I'm talking about her personality. And they're not wrong. I do find her personality to be obnoxious. She's loud, she's overbearing, she's constantly demanding not only attention, but to be the center of attention. She's arrogant, she's presumptuous, she's careless regarding the concerns of others, she's pathologically self-centered. All her stories are about herself and how great she is. I find her tedious and exhausting, and that's just from watching her on TV for a few minutes at a time. In real life, she'd be the sort of person I would go to almost any lengths to avoid being around. She's the worst. But when I say she's a terrible person, I'm not actually talking about that. Well, I'm not talking about just that. Anyway, I'm also talking about the mind reading. The first time we meet Lwaxana is in the episode Haven from TNG's first season. She arrives on the Enterprise to facilitate Deanna's arranged marriage, which never happens because it turns out the guy she was supposed to marry was really destined to marry this other woman who'd been psychically calling to him, who lived on a ship full of people infected with an incurable plague. But you don't need me to explain this. It's probably happened to all of us. For her part, Lwaxana spends the entire episode steamrolling everyone else, being pushy and rude, and oh yes, reading other people's minds without their permission, and then announcing the results of the mind reading to the entire room. She brags to Captain Picard, who she's only just met, about how she had to fire her previous valet because he wanted to fuck her so bad and couldn't stop thinking about it. And then she brags about how the father of the guy Deanna is supposed to marry wants to fuck her too. And then at the end of the episode, as she's about to beam out, she declares, in front of Deanna and Riker, that Captain Picard wants to fuck her too. After Lwaxana leaves, Deanna's like, oh, she just meant that as a joke. But Picard's like, yeah, no, what happened was I was thinking fuck you at her and she misinterpreted it. I'm pretty sure that's the explanation for Lwaxana thinking her old valet and Deanna's former future father-in-law were attracted to her as well. People are constantly thinking, fuck this woman, whenever she's around, and Lwaxana's like, oh wow, everybody wants me. She next shows up in Season 2's episode Manhunt, where she's experiencing betazoid menopause and decides to make that everyone else's problem. She spends the episode trying to force various men on the ship to marry her. First Picard, then Riker, then Rex, the fictional bartender in Picard's Dixon Hill holodeck program. At the end of the episode, as she's beaming off the ship, Lwaxana once again insinuates in front of others that Picard is having sexual thoughts about her. And I'm sorry, but there's just no way that's true. I refuse to believe Captain Picard is entertaining thoughts of doing Lwaxana Troi. Doing away with her? Absolutely. Reaching over and tapping a few buttons on that transporter console so when O'Brien energizes it, she beams into the vacuum of space? I wouldn't doubt that for a second and would consider it a reasonable and rational thing to be thinking given who he would be thinking it about. But fucking her? Nope! I don't buy it. Either Lwaxana is straight up lying, a strong possibility given how often she proclaims her own radical honesty, or she's misinterpreting the intention of Picard thinking, fuck you, at her, as previously surmised, or she's somehow misinterpreting Picard's fantasies of ending her in the briefest but most horrific way he can imagine as being sexual in nature, because it turns out Lwaxana Troi is into some super dark and kinky shit. I don't know. But I do know that Picard is not wanting to hit that, except maybe with a phaser set to maximum. Not that he ever would, just that he would want to. So, like, reading someone's mind without permission is unacceptable, right? Or it would be if reading someone's mind was a thing anybody could do. Can we agree on that? It's like reading someone's diary, only even worse, because there's shit up here I'd never put down in a diary. There's shit up here that ain't never getting out. You know what I'm saying? But Lwaxana doesn't just read your mind without your permission. She then announces to others what you were thinking. Or maybe she doesn't. Like I said, maybe she's just a liar. And she makes up whatever she wants other people to think you were thinking and then says that, and everyone believes her because they know she reads minds. Either way, this is totally unacceptable behavior, isn't it? Why would anyone put up with this? We all set boundaries in our own lives, don't we? Maybe you deal with things differently than I do, but I have a pretty low tolerance for people who disregard my clearly stated boundaries. If you and I know each other and you do something that I consider a violation and I tell you about it, and you do that thing again, we don't know each other anymore after that. I don't give a fuck who you are. Unless there's some mitigating circumstance or some reason that I have to continue to put up with you, and there are very few such reasons in my experience, I don't tolerate repeated, knowing crossing of my boundaries. It's disrespectful, and I'd never ask another person to put up with that from me. Treating people the way they want to be treated ain't that hard, and life's too fucking short to willingly endure people who don't. And Lwaxana is doing this to the heroes of the show. It would be one thing if she only treated villains like this, but she doesn't. She's out there announcing to the crew that she just read their captain's mind and telling them what he was supposedly thinking. I don't give a shit if she's an ambassador or not. That's a get the hell off my ship moment, isn't it? None of this is about Lwaxana Troi as a character in a show. This is all from the point of view of evaluating her as though she's a real person and looking at her as a real person. judging her by the standards by which I would judge any other real person, I don't see how she's anything short of fucking awful. I know some of you love her, and you're entitled to your opinion, but I don't get it. Apparently, some of you wish you had someone in your life to eavesdrop on your innermost thoughts and casually and repeatedly disregard your boundaries. Hey, no judgment, but that's not me. And we're not done with category 1 yet, because it's not just the mind reading, it's also the fact that she's a horrible parent. She treats her child, Deanna, like shit. She's dismissive, she's domineering, she's constantly interfering in the personal and professional life of her adult daughter. Once again, I know not everybody is me, but if I were in Deanna's position, by the time I got to the point in my life that is covered in the TNG series, Lwaxana would be my mother in a biological sense only. I wouldn't be turning up to holiday dinners. I wouldn't be sending a subspace signal to have the replicator make her flowers and a card on Mother's Day or whatever the hell they do. If I were Deanna, I'd say, Mother, I love you, but I'm an adult. I have my own life. And if you can't mind your own business, that's going to be it for us. And then Lwaxana would probably say something like, you're just sore because every boyfriend you ever had wanted to fuck me, which would only serve to confirm that I, Deanna Troi, was making a long overdue and very correct decision. What's even worse is, we don't see her only behaving this way toward her own child. She apparently sees nothing wrong with interfering in how other people raise their children too. Take, for example, the Season 5 TNG episode, Cost of Living. As the episode begins, Worf and Alexander are meeting with Counselor Troi in an attempt to deal with Alexander's disciplinary problems, namely that he's a spoiled, bratty little shit who doesn't do what he's goddamn told. Deanna suggests they resolve this conflict by drawing up a contract outlining each of their responsibilities. Worf and Alexander are both skeptical of this proposal because it's a horrible idea because Deanna is horrible at her job, but they agree to give it a try. Deanna says to Alexander, you know, one day you'll appreciate your father for caring enough to set rules for you. Most children, when they grow up, learn to appreciate their parents. Worf and Alexander leave, and right on cue, Riker calls to tell Deanna that her mother, Lwaxana, is on board. Christ! You know what? I want to take back that cheap shot I took a second ago about Deanna being horrible at her job. That wasn't fair. I need to be more understanding of where Deanna comes from and the many challenges she's had to deal with in her life, obstacles which she, along with us in the audience, just can't seem to get away from. It turns out Lwaxana is here because she's getting married, and she wants to have the wedding aboard the Enterprise. And as long as she's here, she figures instead of meddling in her adult daughter's life, she'll stick her nose in Worf's family and try to fuck up his life just for a change of pace. So she befriends Alexander and sets about doing her best to undermine Worf's already shaky effectiveness as a parent, because what's she supposed to do? Mind her own goddamn business? I don't think so. Worf, if there is any way you can turn off life support to whatever room she's in and make it look like an accident, I am begging you. It might not be as hard to get away with as you think. Captain Picard is on your side. He just needs a little nudge, and I bet he'll look the other way. Anyhow, in addition to being a showcase for Lwaxana, Cost of Living is also a showcase for Alexander, meaning that it gives him an opportunity to display the defining traits of his character, mainly being an annoying little twerp who complains about everything and gets into trouble that other people need to get him out of. And yeah, I know, his mom died. I'm sure it was really hard for this imaginary kid to lose his imaginary mom, but why is it I'm the one who has to suffer because of it? I didn't forget that his mom died. And you know who else didn't forget about that? Counselor Troi. Everyone assumes that Deanna and Alexander became close because Alexander imprinted on her as a surrogate mother when Worf was injured in the episode Ethics, but I think it's the other way around. She wanted to get close to Alexander to live vicariously through him. Your mom's dead, huh? I wonder what that's like. The show goes on. Lwaxana and Alexander spend most of it playing a holodeck program filled with aggressively quirky street performers. The Enterprise is threatened by a colony of space parasites that almost destroys the ship until they're able to unload them into an asteroid field in the nick of time. Lwaxana intentionally sabotages her wedding by showing up to the ceremony naked. That'll do it. And it ends with Deanna, Lwaxana, Alexander, and Worf all taking a mud bath together in that awful holodeck program, with the lesson somehow being that Alexander and Lwaxana don't have to change at all and are actually just fine as the terrible people they are. Since it features my two least favorite characters on the show, Lwaxana and Alexander, you can probably guess that Cost of Living is not an episode about which I have very many good things to say. Alexander is an irritating waste of time under the best of circumstances, and he is not improved by spending an episode taking advice from Lwaxana. And Lwaxana's usual awfulness is amplified this time around by one of several maudlin and grossly miscalculated plays for sympathy. See, it's not that she's rude and pushy and egomaniacal because she's a bad person. She's just overcompensating because she's sad. Aww. There's a scene in Cost of Living where Alexander asks Lwaxana why she's getting married to someone she obviously doesn't love or even like very much, and Lwaxana gives him and us some sob story about how she's getting married because she's old and lonely and afraid, and gee, I wonder how that happened. Oh, wow, the most repellent person in the galaxy hasn't been able to find someone to love and settle down with? What a mystery that is! And what a shame. I feel so bad for her. In this episode and a couple of others, the writers try to elicit sympathy for Lwaxana, or at least justify why she is the way she is, by showing us that she's lonely, or by revealing some tragic episode from her past. And I'm sorry, but every time they tried that, it only made me loathe her more. The only thing worse than a toxic narcissist demanding attention is a toxic narcissist demanding pity. Toxic. That's the word for her. Within the fiction of the show, judging her by her actions and by how she treats other characters in the show, Lwaxana Troi is toxic. She's a fundamentally bad person whose presence should not have been tolerated by the vast majority of people we see her interacting with, and would not be tolerated by most people in the real world. And if she were a real person, and she did find herself alone and afraid while staring down the barrel of old age, it would be no tragedy, because she would have no one to blame for it but herself. And I wouldn't feel the least bit sorry for her having to sleep in the bed she had made. And that's if she were a real flesh and blood human being, not an imaginary space person on a TV show. However, she is an imaginary space person on a TV show, so let's move on to the second category of why Lwaxana Troi is actually pretty awful. She's a bad character. When Gene Roddenberry created the character of Lwaxana, he envisioned her as Star Trek's answer to Auntie Mame. She's even referred to as such in the show Bible for Star Trek Deep Space Nine, a series she appeared on 3 times, despite there being no reason for her to have appeared even once, but whatever, it's ancient history, and I'm not still bitter about it at all. For those of you who don't get the reference, Auntie Mame is a character from a film titled Auntie Mame that came out in 1958. Mame is a wealthy Manhattan socialite who becomes the guardian of her young nephew. The movie follows Mame, her nephew, and various others who come in and out of her orbit over the course of a couple of decades, beginning in the late 1920s. Superficially, there are similarities between Auntie Mame and Lwaxana. They're both rich, middle-aged women. They're both big, outrageous personalities. They both have a flamboyant sense of fashion, but there are some crucial differences. First, Auntie Mame is the star of her story. We get to know her. We do come to sympathize with her and discover the depths that exist beneath the glittering surface. She's the main character, not a recurring character who shows up once a year to fuck shit up for the main characters. Second, Auntie Mame is actually funny and entertaining. The movie is nearly 2.5 hours long, and after a while, I find myself not really caring anymore what happens to any of these people, but in general, Mame is likable and watchable, and while I might not find myself all that deeply invested in her personally, I definitely don't find her off-putting. Can't say the same about Lwaxana. I find her very off-putting. Folks who like Lwaxana as a character usually defend her by saying, well, she's supposed to be like that. You're meant to find her annoying. Am I meant to find her so annoying that I don't want to watch the show anymore? Because That's what happens during all but one Lwaxana Troi episode. I don't find her annoying in an entertaining way. I don't find her annoying in a way that makes me want to see her annoy other characters or see her experience some comeuppance for her behavior, which is good, I suppose, because she never faces any such comeuppance. I find her annoying in a way that makes me want to turn off the TV. In professional wrestling, there's the concept of heel heat. That's what it's called when the heel wrestler, the villain, does things that make the fans angry. The whole idea of heel heat is to get the fans to hate the villain so that they'll root for the hero even more. This concept isn't unique to wrestling, of course. It's part of all kinds of storytelling. You want the audience to hate the villain so that they'll want the hero to ultimately defeat them. But sometimes a heel wrestler can start getting what's called go-away heat. That's when the fans aren't booing the heel because the heel is cheating to screw over the babyface, the hero, but rather the fans are booing because they're sick of seeing the heel. For whatever reason, poor performance, poor storytelling, it could be any number of things, the fans are not invested in what's happening. They don't care about the match or the rivalry between babyface and heel. They aren't booing because they want to see the babyface come back and kick the heel's ass. They're just sick of the heel and want them to go away. That's how I feel about Lwaxana Troi. If she were a better character, all that stuff I just said about what a terrible person she is wouldn't bother me. Lots of great characters are terrible people. Lots of great Star Trek characters are terrible people. Q? Gul Dukat? Kai Wynn? Khan? Utterly reprehensible people, every one. But do I want to watch them? Am I entertained by them? Do I want to see what they'll do next? Absolutely. Lwaxana's annoying qualities, her outrageous qualities, her socially unacceptable qualities, they don't come across in a way that I find compelling or entertaining or endearing. She's not funny. She's not a scandalous truth teller who will say what the other characters are thinking but are afraid to speak out loud, or whatever the various writers on her appearances were aiming for. She's preening, entitled, noxiously egotistical. When I watch her, I'm not seeing Auntie Mame, I'm seeing Mommy Dearest. On the handful of occasions when she's not being aggressively unpleasant, Lwaxana gets mawkish, which is even more insufferable. There's this scene between her and Odo from the first of her 3 Deep Space Nine appearances, Season 1's The Forsaken, where she and Odo wind up trapped in an elevator together. Odo has a bit of a freak out because they're stuck in there so long he can no longer hold his solid shape and has to revert to his natural goo form. The problem is, Odo doesn't go goo in front of other people. He's very private about it, and he especially doesn't want to have to do it in front of Lwaxana, who has spent the entire episode up to this point subjecting him to pushy sexual advances that clearly make Odo uncomfortable. Not that Lwaxana has let that stop her, because, as I've said a few times already, she's just the worst. Odo realizes he can't hold his shape any longer, and in an uncharacteristic display of basic human empathy, Lwaxana tries to make Odo more comfortable by removing her wig and letting Odo see her with her natural hair. She tells Odo that no one has ever seen her without a wig, which is almost certainly not true because she's a lying, manipulative narcissist, but whatever, that's some Category 1 shit. Odo says, "Why? You look fine without a wig." And Lwaxana says, "I look ordinary. I've never cared to be ordinary." And then Odo finally lets go and turns into goo, and Lwaxana catches him in her skirt. And I know what they're going for here. Lwaxana is trying to make the experience easier for Odo by showing vulnerability to him as he's about to show vulnerability to her. But I watch that scene, and when she gets to the removal of the wig and her "I never cared to be ordinary" line, all I can think is, Jesus Christ, get over yourself. Odo, I'm so sorry that having to revert to your natural goo form in front of me is traumatic for you, but if it helps, I know how you feel. I wear a wig. Oh, I still have my natural hair and it looks fine. I'm just vain. See, we're both shapeshifters. I'm glad some of you find this scene meaningful and moving. I think it's sentimental garbage. Though it is some kind of impressive how even when she's supposedly trying to be there for Odo in his time of need, Lwaxana still finds a way to make it all about her. There's another important difference between Auntie Mame and Lwaxana Troi. Auntie Mame was played on screen by Rosalind Russell. a brilliant comedic actor, one of the brightest stars of the golden age of Hollywood, and Lwaxana wasn't. I guess I should move on to category 3 of why Lwaxana Troi is actually pretty awful. She's a bad actor. To be more precise, the actor who played her is a bad actor. I never met Majel Barrett. I have never heard anything about her that would lead me to believe she was anything other than a lovely person. This is not a knock on her as a human being. As a human being, I'm sure she was great. I did not know her. And because I did not know her, I have no reason to pretend I think she was a good actor when that's not what I think. Let's take a moment to separate ourselves from Lwaxana as she actually is in her on-screen appearances and break her character down to how she's meant to work in theory. If I read the intentions of Roddenberry, Majel Barrett, and the writers and directors who have worked on the character correctly, Lwaxana is supposed to be a colorful and flamboyant presence who says and does shocking things that make the other characters uncomfortable, but make us in the audience laugh, or maybe just shake our heads in admiring disbelief. She's meant to be a chaotic, disruptive presence, but in a good way, an exciting way, an entertaining what's she going to say next way. But underneath that, she's also supposed to have hidden depths, a core of sadness and tragedy. Her husband, Deanna's father, died. We learn in season 7 of TNG in the episode Dark Page that Lwaxana had a daughter before Deanna, Kestra, who drowned as a young child. And let's not forget the saddest thing of all, she thinks her hair looks ordinary and she doesn't like that. To realize this character, to successfully translate her from concept to execution, an actor will need strong comedy chops, timing, subtlety, the ability to land a joke without overselling it, and also the ability to play it straight, to convey real, sincere, heavy human emotions like the grief and despair that follow a parent losing a child, or the anxiety of an aging person who fears being alone. So it's a good thing they cast Majel Barrett, an actor with no comedic sense to speak of, and essentially no capacity for convincing emotional expression whatsoever. There are lots of different ways to think about Star Trek. Some have seen it as a Western in space, some have seen it as a series of sci-fi flavored morality plays. Judging by her performance as Lwaxana, Majel Barrett saw it as vaudeville. She plays the comedy as big and broad as possible, overplaying it even within the context of Star Trek, which is saying something, Star Trek not being noted for its reliance on understated humor to begin with, and she plays the serious bits like scenes from a Victorian melodrama, cloying and overwrought. This has the effect of making Lwaxana unfunny and impossible to take seriously, and really what have you got left after that? In fairness to Barrett, I'm not going to sit here and say I've never seen her give a good performance. I have seen her give a good performance, multiple times, in Star Trek shows even. I thought she was actually quite good as number 1 in The Cage, the original Star Trek pilot, and she was good as the voice of the computer, which she performed starting in TOS and continued for pretty much the rest of her life. Play to her strengths by casting her in a role that calls for a flat, monotone, emotionless performance, and she nails it. Majel Barrett was Gene Roddenberry's wife. And I'm only mentioning it here so you don't think it was weird that I didn't mention it, because truthfully, I don't think it's a relevant fact to this discussion. Did Majel Barrett get the part of Lwaxana Troi because she was married to the creator of the show? Yes. The character was created for her by Roddenberry. If you look at her filmography, there are quite a few Roddenberry projects. So what? There are many things you can criticize Gene Roddenberry for as a writer and as a human being, but putting his wife in his TV shows and movies isn't one of them. When I was married, my wife and I collaborated on stuff too. The difference was I couldn't afford to pay her, so really, she was the one doing me the favor. And also, she was good. But other than those 2 points, exact same situation. I'm assuming Gene Roddenberry paid Majel Barrett. I hope he did. I think he probably had to, what with the Actors Guild and all. He should have. Actors get paid to act, not to act well. Anyway, that's about it. I hope I've managed to articulate why I think Lwaxana Troi is actually pretty awful. I know a lot of you disagree, and that's fine. Art is subjective. But I'd like to think you at least understand where I'm coming from. I do want to address one more issue, though, before I conclude, because this is something that has come up a couple of times when I've shared my dislike of the character with others. It has been suggested that my problem with Lwaxana is not any of the things I've discussed in this video, but rather that I'm uncomfortable with her because I'm threatened by a sexually liberated older woman. And I really must defend myself on this point. Lwaxana, being a flirtatious, sexually active, or at least sexually interested, middle-aged woman is by far the least offensive thing about her. Saying I don't like Lwaxana Troi because I'm threatened by older women with high libidos is like saying I don't like John Wayne Gacy because I'm threatened by clowns. It's not the fact that she's a woman of a certain age and horny that is the problem. It's how she behaves. It's how pushy and aggressive she is with those who are clearly not interested. It's how cavalierly she waves off other people's boundaries. It's what a bullying, entitled narcissist she is. I mean, look, she's not unattractive physically. She's rich. She's from a prominent family on her home planet, I guess. There's gotta be a better way to catch a dick than the way she always carries on. Also, why would I have a problem with horny middle-aged women now? I'm 45. Horny middle-aged women are my demographic. If they happen to be older than me, hey, I mean, who's checking IDs at this point, right? Jennifer Connelly is roughly the same age right now as Majel Barrett was in 1987 when she first played Lwaxana, and I mean, Jen, if things don't work out with your current situation, just putting it out there, I know you like younger men. Paul Bettany, her husband, is like 6 months younger than she is. I looked it up. I didn't just know that. I'm not a creep, okay? I'm not. Not only do I not have a problem with Lwaxana Troi being a middle-aged woman who wants to get laid, the one episode in which she definitely does get laid is her best episode. Out of her 9 appearances on TNG and DS9, there is one, exactly one, Lwaxana Troi episode that I like. It's from season 4 of TNG. It's called Half a Life. It's the one where Lwaxana falls in love with Timicin, played by guest star David Ogden Stiers. Timicin is a brilliant scientist who has spent his life working on a way to keep his home planet's sun from dying. He's almost got it figured out, but unfortunately, he's run out of time. See, he's about to turn 60 years old, and on his world, when people turn 60, they are voluntarily euthanized in a ceremony called the Resolution. Enter Lwaxana, who tells Timicin, hey, why go back home to die like a chump when you can stay alive, finish your work, and maybe save your planet? Timicin's like, what an idea! And at first he tries to do that. But Timicin's people take the whole 60-year expiration date thing very seriously, and when he refuses to return home to carry out his resolution, they cut him off from all access to his research, and basically shun him from their society altogether. He has 2 choices: go home and die, or live on, but become dead to his own people. It's a difficult decision because in the midst of all of this, Timicin has grown to love Lwaxana, and he sees the possibility for a continued life with her. And Lwaxana has been doing whatever she can to persuade him to choose life and choose her. I assume she's reading his mind to find out what turns him on and then just doing that. Whatever it is, however depraved or debasing it might be, doing things she would never consider doing under other circumstances, deviant, transgressive acts that push her beyond her own boundaries, beyond all semblance of taste or dignity or self-respect, beyond even ego, into a shapeless realm of pure elemental carnality, a place undeniably tantalizing, but also down to the bone terrifying, a place that makes her feel like she's being torn apart from the inside out, a place she would never have chosen to visit but for the stakes. The stakes! A man's life, Lwaxana! Rock his world, or he will turn and walk willingly into the darkness. Make that motherfucker see stars, or he ain't gonna be seeing nothing soon. If you don't curl his toes, they're gonna be tagging his toes. If you don't let him blow your back out at his next birthday party, they're gonna blow him out. This is the one time where you don't want the climax to be followed by the resolution. Know what I'm saying? She and Timicin have some deep conversations. about the meaning of life and death, about why having a ceremony like the resolution is a good thing from Timosin's point of view, and an unthinkably barbaric thing from Lwaxana's point of view. There's also a scene between Lwaxana and Deanna, where Lwaxana admits that part of the reason she's so upset by the prospect of Timosin going through with his resolution is her own fear of getting older and being discarded. I'm not going to tell you that Majel Barrett suddenly becomes a great actor here, but she's far better than she typically is as Lwaxana, buoyed by much stronger writing than is typical for her character. For once, Lwaxana's most irritating tendencies are reined in, and she spends much of the episode behaving more or less like a decent human being, which is a surprising and welcome change of pace for her. She even makes a genuinely selfless decision. In the end, Timosin decides that the price for defying his culture is too high and chooses to return home and undergo the resolution. And even though she still doesn't like it, Lwaxana chooses to accompany Timosin home and attend his resolution, to be with him at the conclusion of his life, and to say goodbye. It's a gesture that clearly means a lot to him. She puts her selfishness aside, albeit temporarily, instead of the episode trying to convince us it's some kind of a virtue. See? Even though, as a rule, I find her character to be fucking unbearable on multiple levels, I'm capable of giving credit where I feel it's due. Half a Life isn't just a good Lwaxana episode, it's a good episode, period. Lwaxana finally finds it within herself to put someone else's interests before her own, and Timosin gets to avoid spending the rest of his life with Lwaxana by choosing death. That's what I call a happy ending. Hey folks! Hope you enjoyed this one. I'm gonna let you know what the subject of the next Trek Actually video is gonna be, but before I do that, I want to give shout outs to some of my newest Patreon patrons and channel members. First, the new patrons. They are One Winged Pig. Thanks, One Winged Pig. Jason C. Marshall. Thanks, Jason. Reffy. Thanks, Reffy. Mr. Shooter. Thanks, Mr. Shooter. Nicholas Rubel. Thanks, Nicholas. Joshua Howie. Thanks, Joshua. Joe Stallone. Thanks, Joe. Rick the Kobold. Thanks, Rick. Agent Chartreuse. Thanks, Agent Chartreuse. And now, the new channel members. They are Ravan. Thanks, Ravan. Amara et al. Thanks, Amara et al. Darby Judicious. Thanks, Darby Judicious. Inkster 1014. Thanks, Inkster 1014. Ken O. Thanks, Ken. Kevin Brooks. Thanks, Kevin. Sean O'Sullivan. Thanks, Sean. Steph. Thanks, Steph. David Yarak. Thanks, David. Not the Bees. Thanks, Not the Bees. Eric Sean Sings. Thanks, Eric Sean Sings. Andrew the Commentator. Thanks, Andrew. Isolde and Seamus's Clubhouse. Thanks, Isolde and Seamus. It's Omar. Thanks, Omar. Prosthetic Head. Thanks, Prosthetic Head. The Dark Multiverse 24/7. Thanks, Dark Multiverse. Some Jerk. Thanks, Some Jerk. Jess J. Thanks, Jess. If you want to support this channel, you can do so by going to patreon.com/Steve Shives or clicking the join button to become a member of this channel. All patrons and members get access to exclusive posts that allow you to vote in the polls that determine upcoming Trek Actually topics, and also submit questions ahead of time for my twice-monthly Ask Away live streams. If you pledge $5 a month or more on Patreon, or become a member at the $5 a month tier or higher, you get a shout out at the end of a Trek Actually video. If you'd rather give a one-time gift than a recurring monthly contribution, you're always more than welcome to do that by clicking the thanks button right below the video, or via PayPal or Venmo. The links for those are in the video description. Many thanks. If you like what I do on YouTube, especially the Star Trek related stuff, you should also check out my side projects. The Ensign's Log, the Star Trek themed comedy podcast that I'm on alongside Jason Harding and Amanda Billings, and Trek Reluctantly, the watch-along stream Dana Cole and I do every Wednesday starting at 6 p.m. Eastern on this channel right here. As always, links in the description. Now, For next month's Regulation Trek Actually topic, we're entering the end of the year, which means the holiday season for most of us, and that, in turn, means family gatherings. Those can be fun. Those can also be brutal, especially if you have the sort of family where you inevitably end up fighting about stuff. That's why I'm so happy the patrons and members who voted in the most recent topic poll have decided to help everyone out by giving us something to argue about with our nearest and, theoretically, dearest. It's a subject that's been on a lot of our minds lately, especially us Americans: fascism. And since this is a series about Star Trek, the topic will be, what does Star Trek actually tell us about fascism? I think we'll all learn something. That's next month. I'll be back then and a bunch of times before then. So until the next time you see me, whenever that is, thanks for watching, and take care, everybody.